All right, so this week for grammar, we are focusing on quotations. All right, so this first page is focusing on writing direct and indirect quotations. So direct quotation tells the speaker's exact words. So this is exactly what is being said by that person. And you're going to place quotation marks around the words that are actually being spoken. You always capitalize the first word of the quotation. Okay. And you use a comma to separate the speaker from the quotation. And you're going to place punctuation marks inside the ending quotation mark. So for example, it says, Dan said the storm is coming. Well, in this case, the direct quotation is the storm is coming, because that's what Dan is actually saying. So we put quotation marks in the beginning, and at the end, we place our punctuation inside the quotation marks, and we and that would be our direct quotation. Now, an indirect quotation is going to paraphrase or tell in other words what the speaker said. So it's like retelling. And for an indirect quotation, we do not use quotation marks. So it says, Dan said that the storm is coming. So this part right here, Dan said that. This is what's telling us that we're paraphrasing, or we're retelling what Dan said, but not word for word what he actually said. In this activity, we're going to rewrite the indirect quotes as direct quotes, and the ones that are direct quotes, we're going to write them as indirect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Number one, it says, I told the tourists that our form of transportation is the dog sled. So we are rewriting this. This one is an indirect quotation, so we're going to convert it into a direct quotation. So I told the tourists, comma, quotation marks, our form of transportation is the dog sled, period, quotation marks. So that is a direct quotation now. Number two, Joseph asked, how do these sled dogs stay warm? This is a direct quotation, so now we're going to convert it into an indirect. So Joseph asked about how the sled dogs stay warm. Number three, I replied that the dogs have 2 layers of thick fur. So this is an indirect quotation, and we are converting it into a direct quotation. So I replied, comma, quotation marks, the dogs have 2 layers of thick fur. And that is my direct quote. Number 4, the ranger told us that there are only 8 types of this tree. This is an indirect quotation, and we are converting it to a direct quotation. So the park ranger told us there are only 8 types of this tree. And that would be it for our last one. So moving on, we're going to look at divided quotations and dialogue. So a divided quotation is when you take a quotation and you divide it in the middle. You're going to place quotation marks around both parts of the divided quotation, because the quotation is still going to be including all the words that are actually being said. You do use commas to separate the quotation from the words that tell who the speaker is or what the speaker is doing. So in our example, we have, I would be glad, the ranger thought, to get a fire going and to heat up the soup. So our direct quotation is still going to be, I would be glad to get a fire going and heat up the soup. That's still going to be our direct quotation. So we still have to include those quotation marks around that set of words. And we do not include any quotation marks around the part that is telling us who the speaker is or what they are doing. So the ranger thought is the information that's giving us a little bit more about who the speaker is or what they are doing, but not necessarily what is actually being said. Now, dialogue is a written conversation between two or more people. So dialogue is going to have quotation marks. And these pieces of dialogue start on a new line every time the speaker changes. In our example, it says, "We got lost," said Marla, and then the speaker changed. "You were lucky," I remarked. So then it would go back to somebody else speaking. You would start a new line. However, if this I person continued to speak, it would continue on the same line. All right, so now we're going to rewrite this passage using quotation marks and punctuation. So let's go ahead and read it first. "If you want," Eddie suggested, "you can ride my sled." "That would be great," exclaimed Andy. "Give me a minute," she said, "and we'll be on our way." So there's quite a bit that is actually being said. So we are going to need some direct quotations. So for the first part, "if you want," that is a direct quote. Eddie suggested. And then we're going to do, "You can ride my sled." Okay, that is everything that Eddie said. Then it switches to a new speaker. So we start on a new line. "That would be great." And that is exclaimed Andy. And then we go back to a different speaker. So it says, "Give me a minute. She said," is not part of the quotation, "and we'll be on our way." And that would be the end of that direct quotation. So we have a couple of divided quotations. So the first one and the last one. And then we also have some dialogue going on between the different characters. Again, this is what we will be focusing on for this week. If you have any questions, go ahead and look back at this video. It has all the information you're going to need. And this is something that we did learn when we were doing our narratives, so that we could include some dialogue in those.